Hello, this is Zahir Alum. Welcome you all on Frankly Speaking. My guest today, His Excellency Mr. Robert Whittington Gibson, CMG, British High Commissioner to Bangladesh. Mr. Gibson joined the Foreign Office in 1978. He has served a number of diplomatic postings at home and abroad, mainly in the Middle East and Asia, but has also undertaken a number of jobs in multilateral missions. He previously served as Deputy High Commissioner in Dhaka between 2002 to 2005. And he joined again as High Commissioner in Bangladesh in 2011, and at the end of 2015 December he is now about to leave Bangladesh, and we are joined today by His Excellency Mr. Robert Gibson on Frankly Speaking. Welcome, His Excellency.
Thank you.
You have been working for a long time in Bangladesh, first in 2002 to 2005 and on later part from 2011 to 2015. How does it feel when you are leaving Bangladesh?
It feels very nostalgic. I've lived in Bangladesh more of my adult life than I've lived in any other country in the world, including Britain. So it's become a second home for me, indeed almost a first home for me, and to leave after so long is going to be a very, very sad day for me indeed.
During your tenure, I think you worked hard to build relations more vibrant, more animated between the two countries. But what are the major achievements you have during your tenure?
Well, I think if you put my both tenures together, I've seen all sorts of governments in Bangladesh. I've seen the BNP government, I've seen the caretaker government, I've seen the Awami League government. And it's been fascinating to work with all three types of government and try to ensure that what matters is the bilateral relationship remains strong, that we work together. We work together to ensure that Bangladesh is a peaceful, stable, secure, prosperous democracy that plays a very responsible part in regional and international relations. And I think we've achieved that, not only myself, but the whole of the diplomatic community, the whole of civil society, the whole of the media have all worked towards this goal. And I hope I leave it.
But generally, a comprehensive relations between UK and Bangladesh is on high expectation always. Could you realize that level of, or that degree of expectation?
Well, I think the UK is in a very privileged place in Bangladesh because we were one of the first nations to recognise Bangladesh in 1972 as an independent country. It was from London that Sheikh Mujib Bangla came to Bangladesh to assume the leadership of the country on an RAF jet. And the UK also in subsequent years was instrumental in ensuring that Bangladesh was able to join the Commonwealth, was able to join the United Nations, and was able to take its place as one of the great nations of the world. And that has given us a very good foundation on which to build what I hope is a modern bilateral relationship. A relationship built on mutual trust, mutual respect, and mutual interests. We have a huge diaspora of British people with a Bangladeshi heritage, which we respect and value, and we owe it to them to ensure that the relationship between Britain and Bangladesh is good, is firm, is solid, is friendly, and is future directional, not past directional.
What are the things impressed you most during your working life in Bangladesh?
Well, that's very easy because I think the most impressive thing about Bangladesh is its people. It's hard-working, resilient people. Wherever I go in Bangladesh, I meet people who have huge challenges. A few months ago, I went up to the Chors in the north of Bangladesh and saw how precarious the lives of the people who live in the Chors are, and how much our aid program has helped them become more stable in their lives. But what was so impressive was the resilience of these people who had moved home 12, 14, 15 times in 20 years as the river washed away their embankments, but how they still remained optimistic, hard-working, and very generous and very warm when they welcomed me. That was an amazing thing to have done. And it really makes me happy that the UK development programme has been able to help those people carve out a better lives for themselves.
Do you really find the environment conducive in Bangladesh for the UK investors? Does it attract them more to invest and coming forward?
I think the opportunities are here, and there are many opportunities on the pipeline. But what is important for Bangladesh to understand is that international investment is a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
If investors are not comfortable with a country, then they'll go elsewhere. So it's very important for Bangladesh to ensure that investors feel secure and that the rules and regulations that guide investments are implemented fairly and transparently and as quickly as possible. there's a global target, there's a global rating of investment around the world, of which countries like Singapore, Hong Kong, UK is very high up. Bangladesh is quite low on that table at the moment, and to encourage more investment, it needs to look at ways of moving up the table.
Stability is a key question in Bangladesh. How did you find that?
Well, certainly in my last 10 years as High Commissioner, we've had some very unstable periods indeed, and it's been sad to see that the effect of this instability has had on ordinary people's lives. And I was certainly very distressed early this year when such nasty acts of violence took place with innocent people being burnt alive on buses, which is totally unacceptable. That during these periods of instability, their lives remain solid, they work hard, they try to carry on as normal. Again, it's an amazing resilience that Bangladeshi people have. I can only admire it and applaud it.
Not only 2015, the early 2015, you witnessed a lot of events, a lot of happenings in Bangladesh. But in your view, what are the most vital challenges for this country?
The vital challenges of this country are to secure more investment, which we've just discussed, but also they have the huge challenge of the climate change. And climate change is not just about the weather. Climate change is about the changes that you'll have on the world as a whole, on the ice packs, on the salinity and acidity of the oceans. Bangladesh is one of the most vulnerable countries to the effects of climate change. Sometimes they say that already sea levels will rise at least 1 metre in the next 20-30 years. A lot of Bangladesh is lower than that. So we need to work to ensure how Bangladesh can become resilient to this, can cope with this, can adapt to these changes and still retain the prosperity that it values. And also its population growth. It will stabilise eventually, but at the moment it is still growing. And Bangladesh needs to ensure that those young people coming through have the right resources for education, for health, and the right resources for ambition and opportunities. And that's very important to me, that the opportunities are there.
Mr. Robert Gibson, we're talking about the challenges, vital challenges for Bangladesh. And you mentioned climate change is one of the biggest threats and challenges for Bangladesh. It's very vulnerable to the catastrophic consequence of the climatic changes in Bangladesh. But in the wake of, global partnership in confronting this menacing problem, how helpful the global community is for Bangladesh, in your view?
The global community is very concerned about Bangladesh and the challenges it faces, and we want to help Bangladesh as much as possible. The UK is doubling its contribution to the Climate Fund from $5 to $9 billion, and that will help design and implement programs globally for countries that are vulnerable to climate change. The meetings in Paris, which as we're speaking is still not concluded, so I can't comment on what the conclusion is, but it's a very important step in the global partnership to address climate change. As we say, there is no plan B for us. There's no alternative planet we can go to. We have to make this one work for us, to work for the huge rise in population of the last 100 years. And we want to work with all the countries, not only the developing countries, but the developed countries. We all have a role to play. One of the big steps we're taking globally with both in partnership with governments and the private sector is the Mission Innovation Fund. And this will be $100 million, which will be invested to look at renewable and alternative sources of energy, not to find necessarily new sources of energy, but to learn how to harness better renewable and alternative energy sources. Think sources like wind power, wave power, solar power, they're not on 24/7 like a coal-fired power station or nuclear power station. Therefore, we need to harness better the energy they produce when they are working so that we can use them 24/7, and that's going to be a key part of this innovation fund. And that would certainly help Bangladesh, because you have plenty of opportunities with solar power, with geothermal power, maybe with wind power in certain seasons. The winter season is very calm in Bangladesh, maybe tidal power. And we look at how we can harness that to ensure that the energy supplies for Bangladesh are renewable, are safe, are constant, provide things.
We have been undergoing for a couple of years or decades so. Despite of having a robust economic growth in Bangladesh, economic performance is pretty impressive. But if you look at the political stability, if you look at the governance, if you look at the degree of corruption, what is your assessment on all those issues?
Well, certainly the instability, sometimes the poor governance and the the amount of corruption that we understand takes place in Bangladesh is without doubt a brake on growth. And if it wasn't for that, I'm sure that Bangladesh's growth would be much higher. It's impressive that it's managed to average 6.5% growth, GDP growth every year. It probably could have been better without the instability, with better governance and with less corruption in the country. And certainly we have tried to work with the government to look at these issues, to try to improve governance. And of course we have a zero tolerance to corruption. Wherever we find corruption, we report it. And certainly in our development program, we would stop funding any organisation that had corrupt practices. And our businesses, our UK businesses, by law, are not allowed to indulge in corrupt practices anywhere in the world, not just in the UK, but overseas as well. And they can be prosecuted in the UK for corrupt practices that take place elsewhere. So we have a very strict approach to anti-corruption work.
Presence of democracy in Bangladesh is a big question always, and you have experienced some elections, including a general election. The political situation in Bangladesh, what is your assessment and how it does work for the political parties who didn't participate or boycotted the election?
Yeah. Well, I look at it historically. And Bangladesh itself was founded because of concerns about democracy.
Yeah.
And even though in its history Bangladesh has suffered 17 years of non-democratic rule, every time it has bounced back to reintroduce democracy. And that to me suggests that democracy is fundamental to the Bangladeshi psyche, it's fundamental to the Bangladeshi character. They want people to have their say. Certainly the elections in 2009 were, I think, judged to be probably the fairest, best elections that the country has held. The elections, unfortunately, in 2014 were less credible, and we've expressed some concerns that many people in Bangladesh were denied a vote because there was no alternative candidate standing, and that was very unfortunate. But we've also recognised the elections were held under the terms of the Constitution, and therefore the government is legitimate. What I hope is that the government will now look and work with all the stakeholders to ensure that future elections are held with more confidence, that everybody has the confidence to participate, that everybody has the confidence future elections will be free and fair, and that every citizen in Bangladesh has the opportunity to exercise his or her democratic right and vote.
As one of the most senior diplomats or longest serving diplomats in Bangladesh, in every occasion, I mean every significant occasion, you try to involve yourself with your reaction or your impression in Bangladesh. Let me give some impression about some of your statements you have made in the wake of several incidents, like active opposition needed for democratic accountability. On human rights issue, you said the violations won't be overlooked, and you expressed concern about the violence, condemns about the bloggers' killings, and condemned about Shia mosque shootings. So in every occasion, it's found you concerned about the Bangladesh. I mean, did you find any progress on these incidents about the violence or blogger killing, or I mean the law enforcing agency taking actions to brought the perpetrators under justice? So what is your impression on that?
Well, wherever I see intolerance or injustice, I feel I need to speak out. I need to make my voice heard that this is unacceptable. All violence is totally unacceptable. All intolerance is unacceptable. And certainly when it happens in Bangladesh, I will speak out, as I have done in the statements you've just read out. All human rights violations must be investigated, all violence must be investigated, and the perpetrators brought to justice. It's not easy, we know that in the UK, but it must be done, it must be seen to be done vigorously and actively to give people confidence that they can live their lives with their human rights respected and live their lives peacefully without fear of violence, without fear of intimidation. And that is my goal by speaking out and making these statements, to encourage that approach throughout the country.
There has been a lot of cases of first disappearances and extrajudicial killings. Did UK properly or adequately reacted or responded to these issues?
Well, we've always urged the government to investigate fully the disappearances and the extrajudicial killings, and there are a lot of EJKs here when we speak out against them and ask that they be fully investigated. If you look at the UK, we have EJKs there. You know, policemen have been known to shoot criminals, but in the UK, when a policeman shoots anybody, regardless of what the situation, what the circumstances, that officer is immediately put on suspension, while the Police Complaints Commission investigates the incident to make sure that the killing was justified. I've certainly urged the government to do the same, to look at each case, make sure they're properly investigated, ensure that it was justified and wasn't a random or unjustified killing. And the same with the disappearances. We constantly urge the government to look into it, to try to find who these people are, and to put a lot of resources into recovering these people wherever they are. Maybe they are kidnapped, maybe they are being killed, we don't know. But for their families, they need closure, they need to know where their loved ones are or where they have been.
Democracy has been a big, the question in Bangladesh, because there were significantly development was seen in Bangladesh, that the space for opposition parties is gradually or remarkably shrinking. Do you agree with this argument?
I'm not sure I agree fully with the argument. I think what's important is to harness democracy in a way that suits the country that it's in. Most of the democratic countries in the world do democracy in a different way, where there's constituencies, first past the post, bicameral chambers, etc. So Bangladesh must find the democracy it's most comfortable with. And it's also important to ensure, through the election commissioners, through the government, through the civil service, that the conditions are right to give everybody confidence to participate. And I think this is very important, that all opposition parties, all civil society, all media, all private citizens have the confidence to speak out when they want to. In Bangladesh, I think sometimes it is more restrictive than many people are comfortable with. But we certainly encourage the government, and I had a conversation only last week on this issue, to be as open as possible to accept criticism. Criticism is an important part of democracy, and give people the space to air their views.
Do you see enough spaces being made for the opposition?
I think at the moment, with the blocking of social media, it's probably a shrinking space at the moment. But I understand the reasons why social media has been blocked. I certainly hope that the social media will be opened as quickly as is practical, as quickly as is possible, to allow people to express their opinions.
But in the wake of, again, the January 5th elections and the subsequent or the following developments in Bangladesh, do you think the country is rightly poised to hold an election on the basis of level playing field, where all the parties can participate, where we'll see an inclusive election, which is scheduled, as the government is saying, in 2019?
Holding an election takes a lot of preparatory work. It can't be done very quickly if it's going to be a credible election, if it's an election that gives confidence. We have 3 years to prepare the ground. I think one of the biggest stumbling blocks will be ensuring that the parties have sufficient confidence in the election commission. Because I think during the local government elections, they lost the confidence of many people by their actions, by their inability or unwillingness to investigate irregularities in the voting procedures. They have a lot of work to do, a lot of work to catch up, to ensure that everybody has confidence in them. But also the government has to ensure that the Election Commission has the resources and has their support to fulfill their functions properly in a way that everybody is content with.
Democracy or development, which you see the most critically important for Bangladesh first?
That's like choosing between your two children, which is the best. They're both essential. Democracy and development are both essential for the future of Bangladesh.
Okay, but rising extremism is one of the biggest concerns in Bangladesh, and some terror incidents, some terror outfits or radical forces are getting strength day by day. How do you look at the developments?
I think the rise of radical extremism is a global issue. It's not just an issue for any single country, it's a global issue. We recognise this in the UK. We've just published our new anti-extremism strategy, which has 4 major strands, and 2 of those strands are building up communities in the UK, social cohesive communities, but also working with moderate voices to ensure moderate voices stand out and are heard. And this strategy is a strategy which I think can be easily transferred to Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a moderate Muslim country which has had a huge and wonderful cultural history, a cultural history of tolerance, a cultural history of diversity, which I know everybody in Bangladesh wants to retain, apart from a very small minority as exists in every country in the world. And we want to work with Bangladesh to ensure that small minority does not expand, does not become over-influencing, is not allowed to undertake the violent activities that we've seen elsewhere in the world.
Okay, Okay. Excellency, it is estimated that about 500,000 British Bangladeshis today live in the in your country. The British Bangladeshi community is thriving in the United Kingdom, and perhaps their third or even fourth generations are on their way to establishing themselves in the mainstream British business, commerce, and politics. Does it look impressive?
I think it's very impressive. We now have 3 British MPs who have a Bangladeshi heritage, including the Prime Minister's niece Tulip, who is certainly making her mark in the House of Commons. She's, if I may say so, a chip off the old block. She's a consummate politician and knows how to work. But it's also, she's a very hard-working MP. I think this is why she's so successful. But also the diaspora, I think, are hugely successful in the areas of commerce. The entrepreneurial spirit, which you see everywhere in Bangladesh, has been transported to the UK through the diaspora community. And many of the diaspora community have their own businesses, run companies, and make a huge contribution to the prosperity of the United Kingdom. And I know that they also make a huge contribution to the prosperity of Bangladesh, because they still have Bangladesh in their heart, even though they're now British. They visit Bangladesh, they invest in Bangladesh, they undertake philanthropic activities in Bangladesh, and they're a real credit to Britain as a nation to be this diverse, wonderful, vibrant, exciting community, make such a contribution both to Britain and to Bangladesh.
What is the most compassionate memory you are carrying back home?
Most compassionate memory I take back home is when you meet people in Bangladesh who live in extreme poverty, who live in conditions that in the West we would find untenable, unimaginable. And when you meet these people, you realize that they have the same human emotions, the same human dreams as we all have. And that's very heartwarming and very inspirational to me, to work hard for those people, to make their lives better in the future.
And what's the final message for the successor or the people?
Well, I passed the torch on to my successor, Alison, who I know is very familiar with South Asia, and I'm sure she will be following much the same policies as I followed, with her own personal take on it, of course. But I would urge her, as I have tried to do, to look at the young people, to look at the future generations, to ensure they have the education, the aspiration, the drive, the innovation to make Bangladesh a great place. All these young startup companies you see, all the IT companies, these are the future of Bangladesh, and they will ensure, I'm sure, that Bangladesh is a prosperous, democratic, safe, secure country that we can all be proud to live in, proud to call our home.
Thank you so much, High Commissioner Robert Gibson. Thank you very much for joining me on Frankly Speaking. Dear viewers, thank you indeed for watching our show. And we are very pleased to have outgoing High Commissioner Mr. Robert Gibson, and wish him all the best. And we are very happy seeing him completed his very successful tenure in Bangladesh. We wish you all the best and invite you to watch our next episode. Until then, do take care and goodbye.